And then someone walks over and says, "Hey, did you hear about Brazil? 25% on more than 4,000 products. Is this true?" Everyone's freaking out over this. And there's a 100% tariff threat sitting on 3 completely different desks right now. That's exactly why this briefing exists. 12 developments today, 9 days to July 24th, 1 calendar, and by the time this is over, you'll already know where you are, where you stand, and how you can easily deliver that information at any given time to everyone. I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick context because this is what a lot of people get confused over. Not every tariff move works the same way. Some, like Section 122, are the EOs that we all know about. The president enacted it directly, no hearings required. It's collecting duties right now. Others, like some of the Section 301, they go through the entire USTR investigation first. That means public comments, hearings, and a formal determination before any rate takes effect. Nothing is being delayed. It's a legally required record building process. And until that determination happens, a proposed rate isn't collecting any money. Ask yourself one thing about each of those. Is this one already collecting duties, or is it still proving its case? This is your trade and tariff intelligence briefing for July 15th, 2026. I'm Rainey Burke, procurement leader and tariff risk strategist, subject matter expert with over 20 years in supply chain, founder of Career Chronicles, and creator of the Tariff Operating System. There's going to be a full analysis and tools at careerchronicles.org. Links are going to be in the show notes or description, depending on where you're getting this. Segment 1, Brazil. The tariff is coming and retaliation is on the table. First, Brazil, and this is the headline of the day. The U.S. is preparing 25% additional tariff on more than 4,000 Brazilian products, roughly $15 billion in annual exports. And reported categories include pig iron, ethanol, tobacco, sugar, beef, coffee, and certain aircraft-related products are expected to stay outside the action. But don't treat a reported exclusion as a confirmed one, not until the final HTS annex actually publishes. A separate forced labor Section 301 track could layer an additional tariff on top of whatever lands here. And Brazil isn't just sitting there taking this. Brazil disputes the findings and may retaliate once the final action is confirmed. And it's already working to redirect trade towards China and other markets. This cuts both ways. The exposure isn't only what you import from Brazil, it's your exports to Brazil, local operations, agriculture trade, licensing, and customs procedures too. You've got to isolate Brazilian origin spend by SKU, HTS classification, supplier, and entry date. You've got to do that immediately. Okay, don't wait until later this week or next week. You got to model a 25% point increase separately from the existing global surcharge and any Section 232 or other Section 301 duties. And don't use country of shipment as a substitute for country of origin. On the retaliation side, identify any contracts or supply chains that involve both Brazilian imports and U.S. exports to Brazil. Ask your Brazilian suppliers directly for their contingency plans, proposed price adjustments, and alternative production locations. And don't accept automatic tariff pass-through language in a contract before you've confirmed legal incidents and product coverage. A supplier passing along the tariff isn't the same as a supplier passing along the actual confirmed number. Now, here's what I'm actually doing. And I'm going to go ahead and give you my own experience in this, specifically because this is actually affecting us with the pig iron. I'm holding it at 3 rates: 0, 10, and 25%. It's mapped against covered, excluded, and unresolved SKU tags, or in our case, material numbers. I am not moving my baseline off today's date alone. The statutory deadline passing is not the same thing as a decision. And I've seen people move their number just because the calendar says, hey, it's decision day. Don't be that team. If you're already using the tariff impact automation suite that I have or something similar, This is exactly the SKU set you want sitting in the scenario planner today before the final notice publishes, not after. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and go into segment 2, forced labor into the post-hearing decision stage. All right, so this is the forced labor hearings are done. Now it's a waiting game on the paperwork. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is the USTR has completed hearings covering 60 economies and the enforcement of the forced labor import prohibitions. The proposed structure is a 10% additional duty for economies with partial or negotiated enforcement, and then it's 12.5% for the rest. USTR is still deciding whether raw materials, critical inputs, and products with limited domestic alternatives should be excluded. Coverage could reach textiles, apparel, industrial outputs, agricultural products, minerals, and manufactured goods, depending on the final HTS lists. Build a country by country scenario using both the 10% and 12.5%. This is how I'm doing it. Overlay it with your UGAR, Forced Labor Prevention Act exposure, any supplier traceability gaps, and your raw material origin dates. Prioritize review on suppliers who can't document their upstream production locations. That's where this bites the hardest. Segment 3, South Africa, seeking its own way out. Okay, South Africa, and this one's a direct response to segment 2. South Africa has asked USTR not to impose the proposed 12.5% tariff, arguing that its own legal framework already prohibits forced labor and prison labor. It's also requesting protection for platinum group metals, vehicles, citrus, seafood, wine, and nuts. No exemption has been granted yet. And this is especially material if you're in automotive or mining or catalytic converter, hint, hint, or food and beverage supply chains. Keep the 12.5% live in your budget until USTR actually issues a final determination. And and separate your South African platinum group metal exposure from your finished automotive and agricultural exposure. The exclusion decisions here may end up product specific, not country blanket. Now, if you're wondering why I said hint, hint in that specific automotive section of catalytic converters, someone that I have consulted for in the past that actually deals with this specifically, and I know they listen to this, so I'm letting them know. This is for you. My own South Africa file is still sitting at 12.5%. I haven't touched it and I won't until there's an actual determination, not just a request that sounds reasonable. Okay, moving on to segment 4. Germany Pharma, the new risk for European drug supply chains. All right, Germany and Pharma specifically. USTR is investigating Germany's pricing and their reimbursement practices for innovative pharmaceuticals, whether those practices burden U.S. commerce, and whether tariff or non tariff action is warranted. This could touch German pharmaceuticals, active pharmaceutical ingredients, medical products, or even unrelated German goods selected purely as leverage. There is no proposed tariff list yet. Comments and hearing requests are due August 10th, and then the hearing is on September 22nd. If you're in pharmaceutical healthcare or life sciences procurement, map your German origin at both the finished product level and the API level. You need to review your sole source drugs, your cold chain inventory, and anything without a rapid substitution option. Start prepping data now if your industry wants to submit comments before August 10th. Segment number 5, Section 122, 9 days to July 24th. All right. So I'm recording this as of July 15th. So it should be falling onto my podcast the 15th or the 16th, just for the record. So that being said, if you're listening to this after the July 24th and you're wanting to go back and look at how you should have mapped everything or wanting to go back and check your work for any of these calendar dates, that's where you need to remember this section was specifically dated for this. Section 122, it's basically 9 days out from being expired. And I want to take a full minute on this one because there is a detail underneath the expiration date that you might miss entirely. The rate is 10%. That's confirmed. That's settled. There's no ambiguity there. The temporary global surcharge is on a 150-day clock that started February 24th. We know that. Okay, and that's because the Supreme Court invalidated prior IEEPA tariff structure. Okay, so this is the caveat. So unless Congress extends the authority or the administration replaces it under another statute, that clock runs out on July 24th. Now, here's the part that can get easily missed. The surcharge is under active legal challenge, and the appeals court is letting the government keep collecting money on this duties while that challenge proceeds. That means every dollar you're paying under Section 122 right now falls into one of three specific situations: paid in final, paid but under litigation, or potentially refundable. And those are not the same bucket. Treating them as one number is exactly how you lose track of a refund case later. Now, here's what I'm doing about it. I'm opening a contingent refund file today per affected entry with protest deadlines tracked individually. Waiting until after the transition doesn't cost you time. It costs you documentation, and you don't get that back. For the forecast itself, prepare two landed cost scenarios for entries on and after July 24th. One assuming the surcharge simply expires, or one assuming a replacement lands. Don't reduce your PO order accruals under CBP actually confirms the entry date treatment. Now, if you've gotten something useful out of this, whether it's the news, the intelligence, or the strategy that I actually am using as well, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're listening. It's a free way to support me, and it lets me know if I should keep putting this out for you. Segment number 6, USMCA, a period of uncertainty, not a crisis. USMCA, nothing broke, nothing settled either. At the July 1st joint review, the U.S. declined to extend USMCA automatically and is seeking changes. That doesn't kill current USMCA benefit, but it starts the clock towards further annual reviews and possible expiration if the three countries don't eventually agree to extend it. Now, the likely negotiation targets are going to be the automotive rules of origin, the rules value content, agriculture, energy, the de minimis treatment, labor enforcement, and dispute settlement. So don't pull USMCA preference off your current entries. Instead, validate your certificates, your regional value content calculations, your supplier origin affidavits. Model non USMCA, the most favored nation duty rates for your high value North American categories, as a long range downside scenario. Not something you need to do today, but something you should already have set on your calendar. Okay. Segment number 7, EU. They did their part, now watch ours. um, so the EU, and this is genuinely good news shaped with a catch. The European Parliament approved reductions on many U.S. industrial goods as its side of the U.S. EU trade framework. The deal anticipated a 15% U.S. tariff structure for most EU goods in exchange. What's still missing is product level confirmation of how that 15% actually interacts with existing Section 232 duties, the product exclusions, and sector. And what's still missing is product level confirmation of how that 15% actually interacts with Section 232 duties, product exclusions, and sectoral carve outs. Now, this is what you should be doing. Split your EU origin products into 3 separate groups. Do the general framework, the Section 232 covered, and specifically exempted or capped sectors. And before you touch a single landed cost formula, confirm whether that 15% is a ceiling or an additional duty on top of what you're already paying. Those produce very different numbers. If you need more information on that, you're going to need to email me because that's a longer answer, and it depends on your layered situation. For me, I'm not removing the EU from my own risk model just because Parliament adopted something. I'm keeping the escalation clauses alive in my supplier contracts and running the deal holds versus deal suspended scenario side by side because adopted and implemented are two different dates. Moving on to segment 8. Three wild cards: the DST, Russia Energy, and Spain. I'm grouping these all together on purpose because they're the same category of risk. They're really loud, not yet real, and worth a scenario file, not a forecast line. Now, digital services taxes first. The president has threatened tariffs of up to 100% against countries that tax U.S. tech companies through the DST regimes. Now, for everyone who is not familiar what DST is, let me go ahead and do a really quick explanation. It is a digital service tax foreign countries place on the revenues of large international tech companies. And we're talking about like Google, Apple, Meta. There's so much more. There's a lot of SaaS, software as a service, that qualifies under that. And for the online services they provide in those nations. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you a really, really quick rundown on what is the DST. Historically, companies were only taxed in countries where they had physical offices or factories. So, like I said, I'm not going to go completely into it. Right now, it's becoming a trade issue. No final country list, no HTS scope, no effective date. The exposure is bigger than digital services, though. Retaliatory tariffs could hit physical imports from any targeted country. So let's focus on the Russia. So now let's talk about the Russia energy bill. Now, this is a bipartisan proposal which could authorize tariffs up to 100% against countries and entities buying Russian energy. China and India are the largest potential targets, plus sanctions on Russian energy, financial, and defense interests. It hasn't cleared the legislative process and faces real procedural hurdles. If you're in Texas and you work for an energy company, this is not an active duty. And now we're moving on to Spain. The administration has directed Treasury, Commerce, and USTR to develop possible restrictions over the NATO defense spending dispute. Now, this goes into tariffs, sanctions, or broader tariff restrictions, and they're all reportedly on the table. So there's no final product list, no date. Pharmaceuticals, crude oil, aircraft, machinery, and consumer products could all be exposed given how broad the US Spain trade actually is. Now, here's how I'd personally treat all three. Don't load any of this into your base forecast. You can build a separate severe risk scenario for each file. Now, if you have my tariff impact automation suite, you'll have what's called the live dashboard. And you can actually put some of these scenarios in there. And so it'll build your severe risk scenario file for you. So you can just send that straight over to anybody who wants it. And then you can flag any contract language that lets a supplier pass through government charges without documentation. For the Russia energy specifically, identify direct China and India imports that would become commercially unviable at 100%. And check whether your contracts give you termination or price reporting rights. For Spain, flag your Spanish origin spend and identify anything with a long qualification cycle. That includes pharma, aircraft components, specialized industrial goods, but don't suspend orders or build unnecessary inventory off a policy review announcement alone. All right, segment number 9, Section 232. The steel, aluminum, and copper are still doing the quiet work. And I want to close out the news headline section, of this daily briefing, but don't go anywhere yet because I'm still talking about how to put this all together on your calendar. Section 232 duties and their derivative product rules sit separately from the temporary global surcharge and from any country specific Section 301 action. You still have to evaluate whether your products, your components, and your downstream articles fall within covered HTS classifications and whether multiple duty programs are stacking on the same entry. So you need to revalidate your HTS classifications for anything with steel, aluminum, or copper content. And now you need to require your suppliers to provide metal content, country of melt and pour, country of smelt and cast, and component value data wherever it's required. And so I'm going to go ahead and say this for my specific midstream import buyers. Look, if you're managing midstream imports, the shift from raw line pipe to fabricated pipe spools, and I'll give you the HTS code, even though you should be using my Tariff autofill. Hint, hint. I created all these, not just for me. I worked for a long time. I'm going to go ahead and just say this little rant, and I'm going to keep it in this time. Usually I take it out. I'm going to say this little rant. Do you know how many years? I've been in this industry 20 years doing this. And I've created all these amazing tools and stuff, and now I'm offering it to people, and it's so funny how they're like, "Well, how do you do this?" I'm like, "You can either figure it out yourself, use AI, use whatever you want, or you can use what I've field tested and used and also created, and I've developed all this, okay? It's up to you. You figure out what's best for you. If you think free is too much of your time, that's on you. That's not on me. But do what's best for you. But here, anyway, the HTS code for that is 7308.90. I'm giving you only the 6-digit one. If you're in this industry, you know there's an HS code, which is a different number of digits. Okay, this is your critical window to revalidate compliance data. Okay, don't let your fabricators use blanket descriptions. You must mandate that your foreign fabricators, shops, and brokers provide a granular data package for every entry. Okay, and that's including the country of melt and pour. That's for steel mill test report compliance, the country of smelt and cast for aluminum or specialized components, and the raw metal chemical content to clear the AD CVD scope exclusions. Okay. And lastly, the component value breakdowns. Okay, this is supposed to accurately separate the value of the raw pipe fittings and shop fabrication labor. All right, that's my little tangent on what I would tell you if you're a midstream import buyer. The 5 minutes that actually matter. One thing worth naming, and it's not really about today's news at all. Okay, it's every single story I just walked you through started as a date on somebody's calendar before it was ever a headline. Comment, deadlines, hearing dates, expiration clocks, all of it was sitting there. It was dated weeks out in plain sight. Nobody gets blindsided by tariff news. They get blindsided by not opening the calendar that day. So here's my honest take. The 5 minutes, same time, every day, open your tracker, see what moved, closed. It won't feel like it matters on the days nothing happened, which is hardly ever these days because it seems like something happens every day. And then one day, it's the only reason you're not the one standing in that meeting explaining a deadline that's already passed and that increased your budget or you had to deal with AFE or FID on. I'm just saying. Okay. So here is the watch list 5 moves that you need to make this week. My actual list 5 things I'm actually working and acting on myself today, not just telling you to do. 1, Brazil. The final determination could land any day now. I'm splitting my own Brazil exposure into exempt, covered, and unknown HTS buckets today, this week. So I'm not scrambling the moment the notice drops. Number 2, Section 122. I'm still holding at 10%, and I've already got both forecast, expiration, and replacement. It's built and ready. 9 days out is not when you want to be building your first model. 3, forced labor. Now remember, South Africa's exemption request is a preview of what every exposed country is about to do. I'm not assuming my own exemption case is obvious just because it seems fair. I'm documenting it like nobody's going to take my word for it. 4, this is the AGOA and Haiti. I've already pulled my lapse period entries, and August 2nd doesn't warn you twice. And if you haven't pulled yours yet, that's today's task, not next week's. Number 5, 3 valid wild cards: the DST, Russia, energy, and Spain. None of them are real yet. I'm keeping a scenario file open on each one, so I'm not building it from scratch the day one of them becomes real. And like I said, I'm using In the Tariff Impact Automation Suite, there's a live tracker. I've already went ahead and put the scenario in there and sent that email off. Anytime anybody asks, I send it in our little messages. So that way, then they're looking at real data. That can be the scenario. So they can also know there's nothing to worry about, that we have it handled or I've got it handled. My team has got it handled when the time comes. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the list of dates to monitor. If you're Substack, it's in the notes section. Otherwise, you can just write it down. Turn your little recorder on. July 15th. Brazil's final Section 301 determination is expected. July 20th, the USMCA negotiation session watch. July 24th, Section 122 scheduled expiration. July 27th, the China Board of Trade rebuttal comments are due. July 31st, Section 232 pharmaceutical tariffs take effect. August 2nd, AGOA and Haiti retroactive refund deadline. August 10th, Germany Pharma Section 301 comments and hearing requests due. That's at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. And then September 22nd, Germany's Pharma Section 301 hearing with post-hearing rebuttal comments due 7 calendar days after the hearing concludes. Add all of these dates plus the comment and hearing tracker, the refund corporations window, and the monthly watch list. They're already built into that free 90-day tariff risk calendar that you can get in the description, or just go to careerchronicles.org and it's listed under free resources. Basically, I wanted to lead with the calendar today, but because of everything I just walked you through, having something like my Tariff Playbook suite, I'm going to go ahead and just be honest with you. I'm charging $27 for this because if you can create this, have it field tested, and it's not just some static spreadsheets. Look, $27, whatever. If that's what it takes to go ahead and get you to go ahead and just see what's inside of the tariff operating system so you can see how it's going to help you, that's what it is. All right. I don't know how else to tell you that I have 20 plus years in this industry. I don't expect you to use my tariff operating system. I do expect you, though, to go ahead and have something like this built for yourself. And you have to figure out the ROI for yourself. What's it worth? I don't really like doing the sales pitch. I just want you to know it's available. Look, the 90-day tariff risk calendar, it has 6 tabs. It has a dashboard that's auto counts for your critical, high, and medium. That's all free. It's a working tariff calendar. You assign owners and statuses. You get to have the comment and hearing tracker, so it's easier for you to know what's going on. A refund opportunities tab. Look, I use this exact file daily. It's free. It's in the description. I talked about the 2 other resources, both built for what comes after the calendar catches something, and that's all in the description below. The Tariff Refund Suite, it's for when the calendar flags a refund window like AGOA or Haiti, and you need the actual filing path, not just the deadline eligibility, Cape Prep, protest templates, and the document. This is why I think that the Tariff Refund Suite is so transformative. It generates the documents for you. Do you know how much data entry you have to do to go and enter all those documents? I know. I've done them. And I'm sure your team has too. Look, 12 developments today and days to go before Section 122 expires and we see what happens next. The teams that come out ahead aren't the ones tracking the most headlines. They're the ones who open the calendar every single day, even when nothing looks urgent. And the full breakdown, the live tariff rate lookup, and the free calendar, all of it is at careerchronicles.org. Check the free resources tab and all the other tabs for anything else. Links are always in the show notes. This has been your Tariff Intelligence Briefing for July 15, 2026. I'm Rainey Burke, and I'll see you next time. Actually, you'll hear me next time.